Hi, everyone. My name is Gunjan Sial. I'm Transformation Executive at Emerald Technology Group, Inc. I offer clients strategy, governance, program management services on their transformations. With me today, I have Fahad. Fahad, cheers.
Cheers.
Cling.
Cling.
There we go. Fahad, please introduce yourself.
My name is Fahad Zain Javed. I work in for the federal government in Canada. I've been working in the public sector for some time. I'm one of those people that here we characterize as those that grew up in the public sector. What by that I mean, like, after university, one of my first or second jobs was in the public sector, and then I just
Hmm.
stayed here, you know.
Right.
And I worked at several different teams in a few different government departments. And now I have a senior enough role, like I'm an advisor for a transformation project in the government. And so yeah, I'm one of those people that, like, grew up in the government, if you will.
Yes. And you have both business and technology experience as well.
Right. Being working for the government for a while, I did take some time along the way, to take some time off, and I always had an interest in entrepreneurship. So I started a couple of companies along the way. Some of them worked semi decently, some of them didn't. But most recently, I started a company called Buzzer Boy,
Hmm.
which is basically a small AI service that opens apartment lobby doors automatically using
Right.
voice recognition. So I have some business experience, but my main day-to-day mainstream job is working for the federal government.
Wonderful. So speaking of which, Fahad, could you explain to us what transformation in general means to you from an organizational point of view?
So transformation to me, from an organization's perspective, is transforming the essence of what the organization is itself. In the
Hmm.
private sector, it could be something you're undertaking to achieve competitive advantage, or trying
Right.
to address, like, a significant challenge from a technology point of view, business point of view,
Right.
forces point of view, etc. In the public sector, though, it's the perspective is a little bit different. In the public sector, it could be change how the department addresses government's priorities.
Hmm.
And it's largely focused on the government that's in power, and what exactly is it that they were elected to do,
Right.
right? And how, as employees working for a department, how exactly are you addressing that? The
Hmm.
administration of those priorities, if you will. Um, it's Sometimes in the government, it depends on the degree of transformation. It could be, yes, a minor transformation, or a significant transformation in completely how the organization operates altogether.
Right.
In our recent memories, if you will, one of the biggest transformations that the federal government has taken is, if you remember, creation of Shared Services Canada. So,
Right.
um, before Shared Service Canada, a lot of the technology uh, services, the departments would do it themselves.
Hmm.
So the Harper government thought that there would be a lot of economies of scale, better value for the taxpayer, to kind of centralize a lot of those technology services in one organization, and
Right.
then
And
have,
what
like,
what
a.
would be an example of that, Fahad? Like what would be an example of a service that Shared Services Canada would get involved with?
So in the past, just as an example, like the IT infrastructure services,
Hmm.
departments would administer that services by themselves.
Okay.
And so, to try and access economies of scale, Harper government decided to amalgamate together in one organization, and kind of create, like, a hub and spoke model
Okay.
for providing those IT infrastructure services.
So that is very interesting. I guess there's SLAs and SLOs in place in between these organizations, right? Because as much as they're part of the same umbrella, they're also operating as different entities. So that's a very interesting model.
Yeah, so when Shared Services Canada was created, a lot of that stuff, logistics, had to be kind of sorted out, right?
Right.
How is it that one organization now will continue to provide services to several organizations, and continue to maintain its
Right.
own kind of entity in itself, and its own
Goals
sovereignty,
and
if you will, right?
objectives. Yeah.
Exactly. So all of those service level agreements had to be created. A lot of
Hmm.
the ways to do business and interacting with this, the spokes, if you will, all had to be figured out. So essentially, a brand new business plan had to be developed, right? So
Right.
that's a very significant transformation that the federal government took in our existence, right? Very recently, this happened.
Wonderful. And what are the different types of roles you've had? Because I think you've been working in this environment now for about 10 plus years, right? So what are the different roles that you have had across this transformation period in their journey?
So for me, like I said, I grew up in the government, right? So right after I finished my university degree, I got a job as a developer. I
Hmm.
was working for a team developing web applications using Java, and using Ruby on Rails and
Right.
ASP.NET. So like different projects, different roles, but essentially I was a front end developer, focused on like the presentation layer of web applications. So that's how I started. That was my very first job.
Hmm. And
Um,
this was within a particular part of the organization?
Right. So this was when I first started at Canada Revenue Agency, and we were
Okay.
developing back office systems to help basically administer day-to-day applications. And one of
Hmm.
the apps that I worked on was like very simple app to allow um, media relations people to keep track of
Right.
things that they've set out that to media outlets. Very simple database front end application. So that's one of my first jobs that I had. Not really a transformation, just a everyday
Yeah.
develop an app and kind of go right. Since then, I've been part of a few transformation type projects. So I worked on. So from there, I took another job and started working in the SAP space.
Hmm.
And one of the transformation type projects I worked on was CRA was at the time undertaking a large project for modernizing the way it does its human resources.
Okay.
And one subsection of that was its staffing and recruitment
Hmm.
part of things, right? So I worked as an SAP systems analyst configuring the e-recruitment system that we were developing as part of a
Great.
larger modernization of HR.
So definitely a lot of tools, process changes there, including how people operate, right? Their day to day, the change in culture as well, looking at new ways of hiring and new type of talent coming into the company.
Right. So one of the challenges we had at CRA and was, you know, the trying to attract new talent
Hmm.
from people graduating or just like the talent pool that exists in industry and in various different specialties in finance, in HR, in IT, etc. Government often ends up competing with a lot of these, like
Right.
sexy jobs like Tinder and Facebook and Google, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So how do you make working for Canada sound attractive to these new talent to the talent that's available in the pool, right?
Right.
So we were looking at functional ways, process ways, and also process policy, but also having a technology that makes it easy for candidates to be able to apply for a job, and then the managers to be able to find the
Hmm.
right candidates, for the right job as well in a quick time because they also have other stuff to do. They're busy, and
Right.
so that was the essential goal of that HR modernization project.
That is very interesting, actually, which makes me wonder what are some other challenges that you've seen that are maybe specific to the public sector, in your opinion, when they're working on these transformations? So, skill is definitely one, trying to attract someone to, let's call it non-sexy public sector environment would be one. What are some of the other areas?
So transformation in an organization like the public sector, I would say like it's similar to like what other companies will probably face through, right? There's a few key essential items that
Hmm.
you kind of need in a good transformation, right? Um, and I have so I'll go through like a few lists of items that I thought of that I as an advisor would be advising to executive that want to undertake a transformation, right? And the first one, for me, is the most important, is clear vision. So
Right.
before the idea emerges that you want to go through some sort of a transformation, right? Whether it's digital transformation that a lot of organizations are trying to go through now, or anything in that matter, you want to have a clear vision, but more importantly, you want to understand, you want to take some time to do some sort of reflection, right? Why is it? What are the motivators?
Right.
Why is it that you want to undertake this transformation? And it's important to be honest and true, right? Because if you're genuine with this vision, you're going to be the process, the journey of this transformation will
Right.
be a lot easier to go through. So that's for me, it's number one criteria. Another thing is transformation has to be managed like a project, like
Hmm.
project manage the heck out of this transformation, right? A transformation should have a clear end date. like it should not be a forever transformation. Otherwise, along the way during the journey, people would lose interest, people get
Yeah,
distracted, competing priorities would take the right
right.
people, the right influential people out and into different things. So it'll never get done. So
Yeah, so you're saying
project,
have a roadmap, right? Have key milestones identified for certain time periods, know which people are adding values to which milestones, what type of conversations need to take place. Because it also needs to be a transparent, in one of our past conversations, we talked about the communication and the transparency of the goals and how things are going, right, across the organization.
yeah, actually, that was going to be my third point.
Yeah,
Actively manage change, and by actively managing
right.
change, I mean manage the people side of change.
Mhm.
Transformations um, are are tough for a lot of people. Like most people,
Right.
they're used to doing a certain thing. They've been taught, they've been educated, and and processes are developed, and they have tools and user guides and etc. on how to do those things, right? So when we try to help massively change the way they do things, it's hard for a lot of people, and being understanding of that is important. So
Hmm.
actively manage the people side of change, and that's the third point that addresses that. Is very very important.
Right.
Another thing that I normally try to advise to senior management that are looking to undertake transformation is don't be trigger happy with transformation. I know it sounds a little funny, but a lot of times in a lot of organizations, you would have a new person that will take a job, and then they have
Yeah.
like this whole like menu of transformation that they want to go through, and they try to and they want to get it done as quickly as they can. So they like peg their most loyal people to like lead various transformation all at the same time. The
Right.
problem is when you're trigger happy, when you try to get too many transformation going at the same time, it gets really confusing for people, worker B level people that are trying to actively do things to make it happen, because these
Hmm.
transformation then start coming in way of one another. You
Yeah,
know,
it's more overwhelming, right? It's death by a thousand cuts instead of, like you said earlier, a vision which is clearly laid out. And there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, running things in parallel, but as long as you're more organized and it's clear where some of the dependencies are and how that fits in with the daily work people are doing. Because I'm assuming that in an environment like public sector, people also have day jobs. It's not always possible to have dedicated teams, right? So when it first starts off, it's starting off at the side of your desk.
yeah, exactly. And that's what I was going to say. Don't forget that you still have a business to run, right?
Hmm.
Transformation is important, but it's important to make sure that there's critical services that you deliver on a day-to-day
Right.
basis, and they still have to get done. So a lot of people start off transformation on the side of their desk, like you said. Like if I have a time on like a Tuesday afternoon, I'll contribute towards that. So it then makes it difficult overall for the organization to start realizing those milestones that we talked about,
Right.
right? The right people with the right skills, the right um, uh, connections, and the right
Right.
ability to do those things, they're usually not available because they're busy delivering those critical services. So
Yes.
um, and all of these points that I mentioned, they kind of tie back into each other. So going back to that, project manage the heck out of this transformation so that you can kind of see where overlapping roles and responsibilities are happening, and then plan for an adequate amount of time and the adequate
Hmm.
amount of resources along the way, so that you can continue running your business to the quality that your audience,
Yeah.
so if it's citizens or if it's other government departments, are expecting. But at the same time, you can realize those specific milestones along the way that you want to check off, right?
Right.
So you have to be able to do both at the same time. The point I wanted to make was having multiple transformations at the same time. It's okay to have multiple projects on the go, you continue running your business, but if you try to run multiple transformations at the same time, they then kind of conflict with one another.
Yeah.
Let's say as an organization, a lot of organizations are trying to go through a digital transformation. At the same time, let's say they also try to go through some sort of an HR transformation at the same time.
I
It
see.
happens all the time, right? So
Hmm.
you have this team that's dedicated to manage your digital transformation, and they need people of the right skill, usually with
Right.
modern technologies, the skills that are generally really hard to get. But at the same time, you have HR trying to drive a different direction, and now they're conflicting with each other, because now you have a
Hmm.
hard time finding the right people in the right seats at the right time.
Exactly. Yep, I agree with you. And that's where To me, clarity around stakeholders, right? Who are involved when, and not just within your company, but even your vendors. If you think about it from a extension of your company point of view and your clients as well, right? So CRA, think about the portals that were created in the last few years and how they've evolved from that point on. The user experience has been increasing, right? So from that point of view, the education piece for the user also comes in. The communication with the user also comes in. So you're absolutely right. Having some sort of a roadmap that aligns all of these things, the vision, the strategy, what work is happening when, if there's different types of work that's happening that needs to be tied in together, what type of capacity would be required from your people. That is very, very important. And even if you don't start off that way, I've actually had a lot of success jumping into these types of projects and helping the clients align. Because if the team is actually on board, then it's an easier conversation to have, right? From that point of view, the culture piece comes into play. Are people actually on board with your vision?
Yeah, exactly. So generally speaking, like looking at a transformation and kind of remember the first point about having a clear vision and doing
Hmm.
that self-reflection to figure out what are the true motivators for undertaking
Right.
this transformation. Understanding that and being genuine about those transformation. And if you, after going through that self-reflection exercise, you
Yes.
decide to go with it, a transformation in theory should be good for all stakeholders all around, right?
Right.
In the public sector, when a government department decides to take in a transformation, it's supposed to be good for everybody. It's supposed to be good for executives. It's
Right.
supposed to be good for employees. It's supposed to be good for unions. And most importantly, your eventual
Yep.
clients, the taxpayer, is supposed to
Yep.
be good for the taxpayer. So if you look at it from a 360-degree perspective, it's supposed to be good for everybody that's there. But
Hmm.
now you have to make sure that from the point that you've put the vision together, along the journey, you want to make sure you keep your eyes on the ball and continue to make sure that your transformation throughout its journey is continuing to be good for all of your stakeholders
Right.
all around.
And don't be afraid to pivot, right? That's the other thing, because along the way, you will find certain information or certain data that you didn't have before, or people may react to certain things differently than you originally hoped. And
Hmm.
that's where you need to pivot and update your roadmap. And to your point, have the change management in place to be able to communicate that to all of your stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly. So, um,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, 100%. So you along the way you would have to, because at any project or anything that you undertake, you will always have unknowns, right? Like you would
Right.
there's some things that you expect to be challenges along the way, so you can plan for those. But along the way, you may encounter things that you have, like you never anticipated. You didn't think that it
Right.
would happen, right? So you do need to be able to course correct as necessary, and take the path that makes most sense to address those
Absolutely.
challenges that come along the way. A lot of the times, though, like it's important, again, even at those pivot points, to realize what your original motivators were and to
Hmm.
not sidestep your original motivators and to not sidestep the eventual vision that you want to try and achieve.
Right. Absolutely. So stay true to your vision. That's a good
Exactly.
advice. So now, Fahad, with COVID-19, we're all working remotely. How is that impacting, in your experience, transformation on public sector with everybody being remote separately?
You know, these are strange times, honestly. I like sometimes it feels like I just woke up in this like strange
Hmm.
holodeck program on like a Star Trek ship or something like it does not, it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
But joking aside, like you're right, like everything has been put on it upside down, you know, tables turned on its heads, and
Yeah.
we're trying to manage. But honestly, from my perspective, I've seen the transformation that my team is undertaking. It's kind of been on like steroids, like it's super
Okay.
speed, and the about the and it's and the participation from the stakeholders and our partners, like other teams within the organization, the type of partnerships we're getting is unreal. I've never seen anything like this.
Hmm.
um, and it just goes on to show one of the things that make me feel really, it pleases me as a taxpayer as well, right,
Yeah.
is the quality of talent that we have in our public service. You know,
Wonderful.
a lot of times, private sector and people may joke around about government people being lazy or whatever. It is completely the opposite. The
Hmm.
drive at which public servants are trying to, the way they're working to try to get things done, it's mind-boggling. It's amazing. It's
Absolutely. And we have already seen some of that in the announcements that have come out, right? To support the individuals, the small businesses. I'm a small business owner as well. So there's a vested interest there from an individual point of view, but also small business point of view, right?
yeah.
So it's been very interesting to see how they've been able to put up online portals and support people through technology as opposed to give me a call and stay on hold for 5 hours. Good
Yeah,
luck with that.
yeah, exactly. I think there was a quotation by one of the small businesses that they had, or somebody that had to fill in the application for CERB,
Hmm.
the emergency benefit, and they said something like it was so easy they thought it was fake. That's a good compliment. That's and to
Yeah.
see teams put together applications like that in a matter of days
Yeah.
is quite phenomenal.
Yeah, and the test of that would continue to come, right, for the government employees and for transformation folks like yourself as well. When you have to reconcile all of this data at the end of it, and we had a conversation offline about that, how different data needs to come together and different type of algorithms need to come together to define what will happen next. Because after this COVID situation's over, there would still be need for change in the way that you see the market. You're not just going to go back to what it was before, right?
Right, exactly. So one of the things that one of the issues that the public sector faces, and it's been covered in the news in many places also,
Hmm.
is in Canada we have something like 260,000 federal workers that work for the federal government, right?
Right.
So obviously not all of them can work remotely from home at the same time,
Mhm.
right? That's a massive volume.
Right.
Uh, Also, logistically, it's not possible for governments to be able to send them laptops and mobile devices, et cetera, right?
Mhm.
So what I'm seeing is the digital transformation that the federal government is taking. It's been kicked into high gear and to try to think creatively and outside of the box on how to address that problem of making sure that um, majority of the workforce, critical and non-critical, can
Right.
continue to work should this pandemic last longer than longer than like a month or a month and a half or something.
Yeah.
If this becomes the new normal, it could spark a digital transformation in ways that we've never seen before. But
Absolutely.
from a positive perspective, right? Like giving
Mhm.
people the opportunity to work remotely and having access to that capability. Should
Yes.
anything like this happen again, we would be a lot more productive as a society
Right.
as a result of it.
Yeah, and to be honest, there would be certain positive things that would come out of it, and there would be some negative things. So I think as a government, it's almost your duty, right, as government employees, to think about all the different stakeholders, and that's the tough part to me about public transformations as opposed to private ones. Because in private ones, you're thinking about a certain type of customer or an individual that you're supporting, right? You think about banks or retailers. You're thinking about your employees, you're thinking about your shareholders, your stakeholders. In government, you have to think about everybody, which makes it a little difficult. So one of the things I'm wondering is how do you negotiate these interests internally? Because on a transformation, I'm sure you run into a situation where one party feels a little differently about certain decisions or certain cases than another party. How do you come together to find a resolution to those?
You know what? That's hard, but I think this type of negotiation would be true in any case. It doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be a public sector, right? Like even in private sector, even when for a company that eventually reports to its shareholders,
Right.
any kind of project or anything that you're undertaking, you would still have to compete with competing priorities, right? Different directions, different agendas that people have,
Hmm.
personal for their teams, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the same thing here, but the only difference is that like most people that work for the public service, most people that work for the public service, like we said earlier, like the motivation that comes from working in as a professional in public service is that you're working for Canada.
Right.
Like you're working for your fellow citizens. So you're always keeping that in mind, and that helps kind of come together
Hmm.
towards a conclusion that what we have to no, doesn't matter how we cut it, we have to make things better for our citizens. So
Right.
sometimes people are much more it's a little bit easier, I would say, probably to kind of negotiate those path
Hmm.
forwards together.
Very interesting. And with that, thank you so much, Fahad, for your time. It was very nice catching up with you. Cheers once again. Cling. Take care, Fahad.
No problem. Take care. Nice talking to you.
Same here.
Bye.